Welcome, and thank you for tuning in. Today we are talking about Oscar Piastri, who is one of F1's rising stars and would be leading the title race by a wider margin but for McLaren strategy calls and team dynamics, which have kept his teammate Lando Norris within touching distance. Is this evidence of McLaren prioritizing Lando over Oscar, and if so, why? Let's break it down. But before going further, if you enjoy this video, we invite those of you who haven't yet done so, to like, comment, share, subscribe, and click the notification icon, to be notified when the next one is uploaded. We'd also like to urge those of you who haven't yet done so, to sign our online petition for an inquiry into the BBC and Channel 4's coverage of Lewis Hamilton and Abu Dhabi, which we have amended to include Gary Lineker's sacking by the BBC. A link has been provided in the description. If you are on X, then please repost our tweet. Thank you. Fair dinkum, we should make it clear that even though we believe that McLaren have been granted an FIA-enabled championship-winning car as reward for the support they gave Liberty Media in gaslighting the theft of Lewis Hamilton's record-breaking 8th world title, we are Team Oscar. This young man joined them after the deal was struck to rob Sir Lewis, and is only doing what a driver is supposed to do, which is compete for the title. We also recognize the irony, or karma if you will, that an Australian driver could be robbed of his first title after an Australian steward robbed Sir Lewis of his 8th, but again Oscar played no part in that, and he does not deserve what has been done to him. By the way, do you recall that last year when Lando, as the senior McLaren driver, was supposed to have been the one challenging Max for the title, he claimed he would not have wanted to win the title as a result of team orders, when it was being suggested that McLaren should impose team orders to help his title chances. But the truth of the matter is, he never believed he could beat Max and did not want to exacerbate the gravity of failure after receiving the benefit of team orders. However, now that Oscar has shown how fake Max's credentials are, he is eager to take whatever advantage he can to beat his younger but more accomplished teammate. That is who Lando is when all is said and done. Now, he claims he has no issues with being a villain when he was booed on the podium in Monza, after the team ordered Oscar to yield position, so he could close the gap. In 2024, McLaren also claimed that they would not be imposing team orders because it would have destroyed future chances. They were aware that they wanted to be in a position to win in 25, 26, and 27, and if in managing the 2024 season they applied team orders, they would end up destroying the balance, and not have a solid base in the following years. Well, talk about cognitive dissonance or Freudian slip, it appears to us that this is McLaren exposing the plot to run rearguard for Max in 2024, in exchange for titles in 25, 26, and 27. The only snag was that the titles were presumed to be going to Lando, who as the senior driver was expected to outperform the younger driver who had just joined them the previous year. But now that Oscar is outperforming both Lando and Max, and running away with the title, suddenly because Malone needs a closer title race to sell to the American public, they have no issues with destroying the internal balance and long-term health of the team by enforcing team orders against him. They have no issues about coping with the public opprobrium that accompanied the Monza debacle. Or, the undeniable evidence that the internal balance has been destroyed, as Oscar and his side of the garage were absent when the rest of the team were celebrating winning the constructors' title in Singapore as the crowd chanted for Oscar as his name was trending on X. The Australian media coverage of Singapore says it all, as McLaren and F1 are now in a position where their reputation and that of the sport will be further damaged should Oscar not win the world title. Way to go, guys! Now, Why would McLaren damage their reputation by reversing their stance on team orders when their drivers were so far ahead of third-placed Max, if not that Malone had instructed Brown to do so? We have repeatedly mentioned the irony of what appears to us to be a total disregard by the wider community of Pastor Martin Niemöller's famous and deeply moving cautionary poem about the dangers of silence in the face of tyranny. What is happening to Oscar now is a continuation of what happened to Sir Lewis in 2021. F1 is now in the hands of a media mogul who manipulates races to promote his commercial interests. They robbed Sir Lewis because he did not fit the profile of who they wanted as a champion to promote the sport in America and the emerging market of the Netherlands. They are sabotaging Oscar because they believe they need the appearance of a hotly contested title race to promote the sport to an overindulged American audience. Never mind that Oscar was an overlooked prospect at the start of the season, who has driven his heart out to earn his lead over his overrated challengers. Never mind that he would be Australia's first world champion in some 45 years since Alan Jones in 1980. Never mind that ceteris paribus he is on schedule to make history as the fourth youngest F1 world champion, a distinguished list that interestingly enough Max Verstappen has been excluded from by our ChatGPT source. Wonder why? Never mind all that, John Malone wants to be able to sell more tickets in the US, so Oscar must be denied or restrained. Is F1 the world's greatest global sport, or is it Malone's plaything? The US market is more important to Malone than the much smaller Australian market, so why not sacrifice the Australian driver for the sake of developing the US market? So, here's the thing: how did he get the idea that he could get away with such dastardly acts? Could it be because the world was happy to move on when he used an Australian steward to sacrifice Sir Lewis? If he did not feel that he has gotten away with doing that, would he be sacrificing Oscar now? We know Toto Wolff and Mercedes were motivated to sacrifice Sir Lewis in 2016, so they could have a German world champion in a German car. But why should Zak Brown, the American boss of McLaren, care which of his drivers wins the world title, if not that he is following orders from above? Please let us have your answers in the comments, but you already know what our view is. When the critics of DEI sacrificed Sir Lewis on the platform of DEI, by taking an eighth away from him because he already had 7, so that in the interest of diversity, equity and inclusion, a young white driver could have his first, the world went silent after a flash of uproar. When they gave the young white usurper 3 more titles, to embellish his fake record, the world grumbled under their breath but stayed silent. Now that they are sacrificing a young white Australian, so that an old white American can make extra profit, how will the world react? What will happen when they sacrifice all other countries, so that a young white American driving for an all-American team can usher in a period of American dominance greater than any ever seen in F1? The American thirst for dominance has been boldly displayed for all the world to see by the American president that came to power on the platform provided to him by John Malone. We are all witnesses to and living through what is happening with the tariffs. Those interested in golf would have seen what happened at last week's Ryder Cup. Those interested in MMA will have heard about the event scheduled to be hosted at the White House next year, where an American team will compete against a team made up of fighters from other nations. So, if you cannot see the writing on the wall, then you should get your eyes tested. The reason people like Zak Brown and John Malone are doing what they are doing is because they believe people will move on and accept whatever scams they run with time, but America is now living with the consequences of such actions. It should be recalled that after Abu Dhabi 2021, Christian Horner routinely suggested that time will move on, and people should forget about the robbery. Toto Wolff echoed the same sentiments just before his wife got a plum position in F1. So, there's a clique that believe they are above the law and can do whatever they please because people will mutter for a short while and then move on. This is why we are urging you all to like, comment, subscribe and share this video, so we can reach the tipping point where they have to take notice. It is particularly important to share the video as widely as possible on as many platforms as possible because Google prioritizes content that is embedded and shared elsewhere. Forza Ferrari.